My name is Douglas Florence. I am a CPP, designation from ASIS International, as many of you in the security industry may know. My background, currently, I am the director of the global gaming sector in business development for Avigilon, a Canadian-based corporation, and we're providing high-definition video in the security and surveillance environments for many sectors, and I represent the gaming side of that. I am also the Vice President affiliate members with the International Masters of Gaming Law. Those are individuals that are gaming lawyers, consultants, in-house counsel, regulators, accountants, educators, as well as executives from the casino industry that we discuss the legal issues and we set a lot of legal trends throughout the world. I also partnership with the Homeland Security in the Americas, representing the casino sector and video and security surveillance solutions for Homeland Security. What we're going to talk about here today, and what I'm proud to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide some of this information, is looking at how now we're taking the high definition side of video, we're transitioning from the analog side, and then having the responsibility of saying how do we protect that infrastructure and layering of the security. Because of significance is where we were with analog video and the transition through the use of the encoder to take us into the IP and VMS video management side of things, and then be able to interact with other business solutions, and then bringing forward the modern side or the innovation of high definition video and the clarity that gives us the ability to bring the best evidence out and to provide the executives in casinos, security managers, risk managers, or any business manager the ability to make an informed decision. And so how that is achieved, here we are today. In the past we were using VCRs, we then transitioned into the DVR world and into the NVR world, and then now really network video and network security surveillance solutions are really a lot of our software and hardware devices combined together. And how do we protect that infrastructure? We have seen throughout the course of time a lot of hacking that has gone on throughout the world and how we've defeated systems. But on a closed network, which is what we use in the gaming sector primarily, we have to look at things a little differently. We know that there have been attacks in the last year or two in the gaming sector that have contributed to tens of millions of dollars being taken from specific casinos. And it's very easy to go back and say, what could we have done different? Why did they suffer that loss? But the end result is to say, when we look at layering security, it's more than just your security or surveillance departments today. It's a blending of security, surveillance, the IT security side, and the IT department. And how we achieve that is, you have to imagine you have, in our case, a casino floor and all these server-based technologies, be it your POS systems, your ticket in, ticket out solutions for your slot machines, your player rating systems, your table game systems, your food and beverage systems. So it's all these things are reliant upon software interoperability. So as a security solutions provider, what we've now done is say, okay, we have those server-based areas in the casino. I have to not do more than just put a lock on that door today. And that is traditionally what we've done. We have a lock on the door and we feel secure. Well, we know now that that's not the case. So going back and looking at how can we layer the security, it's saying that we're going to say, okay, on the door, I'm going to want electronic locks today. So I can actually look at the data of what key and what person who's assigned to that key used the door and when they authorized to do the use. I'm going to add an alarm contact. It's an old school device, but we still use them. An alarm contact to tell me the door has been opened if the lock is bypassed. And then once I'm in that room, is to be able to use video in combination, whether it's video motion or video analytics, to tell me there's a person in the room. So you got people in motion, and to say, what are they doing? Are they supposed to be there? So the first step is I've gone through that door, and a series of things should happen. You'll have an alert to the security department that says I've now had access to a critical area in my property, and you're going to have the IT department get a very similar alert, and it might be to a group of 2 or 3 people in the IT department, because they really know where their staff should be working today. Because they get the phone call from security, they say we've had a door open, we now speed up and escalate the response to what I call interception. Interception means that I'm going to have a high likelihood of either catching that person in the room if they're not authorized to be there and to find out why they're there, or we determine that it's a legitimate reason for that person to be in the room. But because I've now had the IT department alerted, people that we know are in the building because they are in the schedule and the system knows this, sends them this message. The security department and the surveillance department, who have video and other access control systems that they can look at, now are having data to say what the event has happened. We can now very quickly make a determination, is it legitimate? Then we go one step further. Now we have racks of equipment, and those racks should be secure. So we have locks on those doors. And the same thing with those locks. Those locks are set to when those locks are open. We know a key was used to open door number 2 in rack number 3. And at the end, the same message system is now circulating, and we have the ability to escalate that response, because now we know we have a much more critical area that could potentially be under attack or repair. And the next step is to say, I have switches and servers. And the minute I touch one of those switches, are the MAC addresses in those switches turned off? If I'm not using those ports in that switch, why would I want to leave those available to somebody to touch down on my system? I mean, I'll give you an example. I went to a casino in Australia and visited with a surveillance director, and I'm one of those folks that's always looking for the open source free Wi-Fi, okay? And I'd open up my laptop and I see that there's the casino SSID. It pops up, it's asking me for a password. I turned to the surveillance director and said, what's your password so I can get on your Wi-Fi? I'd like to show you a few things, because the internet's such a wealth of knowledge. And he goes, well, we don't have Wi-Fi in here. I said, well, here it is, and I showed it to him. He calls his IT director, who comes down into the surveillance room. He sees it, and I said, can I get the password, please? And he goes, we don't have Wi-Fi here, and he leaves. So after he left, I kind of turned to my colleague, and I said to him, doesn't that concern you? We're looking here at an SSID, and it's asking me for a password, and he doesn't know that you're supposed to have a Wi-Fi device, and he leaves. I said, so let's figure this thing out. And we literally went outside into the parking lot to see how far that signal was carrying. And we were about 4 or 5 rows into the parking lot with my laptop on battery, and I still saw it, and I said, it's only asking me for a 5-digit password. Could it be this simple? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lo and behold, I now had access to a server through a switch that had Wi-Fi attached to it through an access point. And I said, we're in. I said, now if I have the software to whatever I'm into right now, I'd be able to do whatever I want to do. So we went back into the surveillance room, we went to his switches, and we traced out the cables off his switches, and we found an access point. We unplugged the access point, and of course all of that went away. It turned out to be an integration partner who was providing services to that property, who had put an access point on without authorization, that could have now gone in and used their video system for whatever purposes they wanted to, or any other type thing. I think how simple that is, but they were in that secure area. They had put in an access point, not told anybody. So having turned off all the other inputs on that switch, or the MAC addresses, would have protected the casino from having that happen. So I mean, that's kind of like, I'm not going to call it a grand type of thing. We curbed that early. But now imagine you're on the casino floor and I gain access to your systems. And I know game outcomes. And we know that that's happened in not just Australia, it's happened in almost every continent, where people who have a criminal intent, they find a weakness in our rules and our games, now take advantage of the fact they can go through a door that has a simple lock on it. There's not a camera on the outside of the door, there's not a camera on the inside of the door. How are they going to prove I was even there if I get in and out without being caught? And I get those game outcomes and I transmit those, or get the message to my player, which is a pretty simple thing to do in games like Baccarat, where I have to make one bet as either player or banker. And oftentimes, what contributes to that type of a scheme being successful is we start breaking rules for our players, our high-value players. They tell us how they want the game dealt, and if they say, look, the cards haven't been turned over yet, and then we feel safe because they came out of a smart shoe but they're not exposed, that now I'll let you change your bet. And then guess what? They can change any bet anytime. And let's say they have the winning bet already, they don't have to change anything, they already know it. So it's a matter of, sometimes these schemes are simple, and layering of security, and we talk about the communication between security, surveillance, and the IT departments within a business unit, be it a NAP site, be it an airport. We all have critical infrastructure. And in the casino business, it does impact our revenues directly. It's not just a threat to the public, it's a threat to the bottom line. So what is your threat when you talk about layering security? So additionally to doing all the security, and when we talk about layering security again and going beyond just locking the door, putting the cameras in place, putting the video analytics in place, and giving me the ability to intercept or respond to some type of an intrusion on my system is what is going to give the criminal, the person who's come up with the scheme, the ability to get that game outcome. So let's take the game of Baccarat particularly, and we know that there was a crime last year in Australia at a major casino property where they were getting game outcomes, and they were allowing the player to change their hand after the cards have been dealt from a smart shoe. So once the cards are out and they're sitting there, we know which hand is the player, we know which hand is the banker, and if you know that, all you got to know, you don't need to know the card values per se, I just need to know which hand's going to win, player or banker. And let's say I already have a banker bet, and we've intercepted the data from the table, and here's how it works. When we deal the cards, there's a scanner that reads the card. So once we have that data, we have a shoe that's wired to a server, a small server on the table. The server on the table now transmits that game outcome because it knows the game outcome already. You got to remember, it's just data. So it's just waiting for me to push a button in order to display the cards on the reader board, because we do that in a lot of our casinos with roulette. We do it with some poker style games. We do it with Baccarat games. So we're giving them the game outcomes so they can track who's winning and who's losing and so on. And it's just something that the customers have gotten used to. In the old days, they just wrote stuff down with paper and pencil. They don't have to do that anymore. But that data is going into a server room. So there's our closet that we've protected or not. In this case, the closet wasn't protected. So I have the ability to now go in and intercept that data, and then all I have to do is communicate a player or a banker win to the room. It could be Bluetooth, it could be someone who's in our entourage, a company on the game. It doesn't always have to be the person sitting on the table. And if you're going to put a large amount of money at risk as a criminal, and if you make the wrong decisions, you want a scheme that you know is going to be foolproof. And so when we sit down and evaluate how they got those game outcomes, the obvious things come to rise to the top, that we had somebody intercepting the data along that chain. So before it went up on the board, we knew the game outcome. So it gave us the ability to change our bets because we had negotiated that with the casino. I'm what we call a whale. So, when we have that high value player come in, they can sometimes dictate, what their rebates are going to be, what their win-loss time periods are going to be, and so on. So there's a lot of schemes, but in this case, we're talking about cheating. So the weakness here, and another layer in the security, when we talk about any of the technology where we know the game outcome before the cards are exposed, before any of this is going to take place, and the game is done, win or lose, we need to encrypt that data. So now we have the ability to say that was something we overlooked. We weren't encrypting that data because who would believe that somebody would break into the room and go to that level to communicate it to someone? Well, when we're talking millions of dollars, that's why they'll go to those levels. And so in this particular scheme, now if they came in and did that, you're going to probably find that property is not going to break those rules anymore, or it's going to go a little higher in the management chain to make that decision. And they're encrypting the data coming out of the transmission. So just that encryption alone is going to make it to where if I do intercept it, I'm going to have to now break your security, and I'm going to have to break your IT security because now I've got to go through either a 512 or a 256-bit encryption on just a couple of game outcomes. So today we're seeing encryption of that data. And it's not that it wasn't an industry standard. When we look at our slot business, which in New South Wales and throughout Australia with the clubs is a pretty big handle. We talk about the amount of money that's earned and the taxes that go back to the community and to the government there, is that they were already doing a lot of that encryption in the slot business and server base because they had guidelines for that. In the world of cards, we didn't really have those guidelines established, and now that process of communication, it's like no different than why I'm sitting here talking about it today. Once we knew that happened, it was going back and saying, what could we have done to prevent that from happening, to intercept that person? Because if I intercept them, and now I've either gone in and identified them, I haven't proven a crime yet, but I've got them in that room, they're in the wrong place at the right time, I can show that through good security practices of using locks, video analytics, which is taking my camera system and now having it look for people in motion. Because people are going to be moving around. I mean, that's the bottom line. Are they in the right place or the wrong place? And then going back into looking at the video and the clarity, because now we're applying high definition video into critical areas. I'm going to have the clarity to get a great ID shot on this person. I'm not going to have that fuzzy, grainy video image of the past, which we still do. I mean, we can only make analog video look so well in our market. But to say that today you should expect that your analog image live and your analog image recorded side by side should be almost indistinguishable. If you don't have that level of clarity, then you're not using the right technology today in the IP world. But if you do, now that step into high definition really starts making sense. Because even though you can achieve this level of clarity, you can take it to the point where you can always ID or capture the license plate number on a vehicle. You get the data that you're looking for to make an informed decision. Now when we go back and we kind of look at where the challenges are, we've talked about a specific challenge in layering of the security. And when you look at the challenges of transitioning from an analog environment to a high definition environment, there are certain considerations. And I use the word challenges. I don't want to throw it out there as a heavy word. There's things that we haven't looked at in the past that we really truly need to be looking at today, which are part of what are the ROIs. I mean, at the end of the day, all of these things are investments that management committees have to make, that properties have to make, to say, why do I want to do this? What compelling reasons do I have to use high definition video besides being able to make informed decisions, to have the clarity in the video where I'm not guessing anymore at what I'm seeing in there. If I have a slip and fall, what causes slip and fall? With high definition video today, I can tell you there was water on the floor. I can tell you that somebody, if they're in a grocery store, they slipped on a bag of peas that somebody didn't clean up. So with high definition, I can make these determinations. But the real, besides mitigating losses and mitigating risk management, which to me is a huge benefit of high definition, it's being able to say there are other factors. We did not look at electricity. We didn't look at HVAC and AC demands. And as an example myself, a few years ago when I was working with a large casino, we discovered that. And it wasn't by mistake. It was where we had electrical engineers that were working for the property. They knew they had to keep their existing surveillance infrastructure and security infrastructure working, and they were going to put in the next generation of technology, innovation. They're being innovative in what they're doing. Well, they realized both systems drawing electricity, putting loads on the air conditioning, could create an environment that could make the existing system crash. So they're now asking for verification on what level of BTUs, the amount of heat we're generating. They're asking about the amount of draw we're going to make in electricity. And they challenged us on that. And so, and that's going to be any provider should be thinking about this and be challenged. When we went back and said we verified our numbers and we stand behind what we said, we're correct, they said, well then here's what's going to happen. As we put in the new system, you're not going to put as much demand on our system as we expected, so we don't have to add more electricity, we don't have to put in more HVAC, we're going to be within expectable limits, but as we take the old system offline and we bring the new system online, our power is going to drop. In the case of this property, it was significant. It was over a 70% decrease. I mean, we took air conditioning from 25 tons to under 15 tons, and we dropped electricity to the point, when we talk about the dollars, because that's, as a surveillance director, as a part of the management team, I never budgeted for electricities. On my P&Ls, I had to talk about manpower, overtime, benefits, all the costs that I had to the business, but I didn't talk about how much electricity I was using. I mean, I don't want to call myself a vampire, but we were when it came to electricity in surveillance rooms, because we had thousands of cameras, hundreds of recording devices. What were we really talking about here when we talk about the fact we're not going to have, put a demand, but when this all drops off, what's the savings? In this particular casino, we're talking about, well over $100,000 a year. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but it actually went up beyond that. And so for any technology refresh, you now have at the C level, the executive level, the ability to make a financial decision that is going to reward you the minute the system comes online and going forward. I mean, if you can save tens of thousands of dollars a month over the course of life of the system, cost of ownership can almost be zero based on electrical savings alone. HVAC, when we drop those loads, it's less maintenance, it's less demand on your HVAC, it's also less power draw. All these things combined, and then the space, the environment that we're putting the employees in one casino setting, the environment became just quiet because there's less moving parts today. There's less fan motors blowing, there's less noise. And so to be able to walk in a surveillance room and see people effectively managing the video, because I mean, here's another benefit. The amount of time they're going to spend investigating some type of a loss or a crime or a human resource event, they're going to be able to recover that information much more quickly, even with the analog world now, because the encoder is going to take them into and bridge them into the transition. So when we talk about the ratios, it gives them the ability to now not to make a total reinvestment, but if they're looking at building out a new property, now we can make an additional argument for why go POE, because now what we're saying is we're going to have less copper pipe, less conduit and copper going into the infrastructure. We can bring construction costs down in some cases by as much as 25% on a new build or a complete remodel. And that can be significant when we talk about the construction budget. And then when we look at the infrastructure going forward, it's going to be much easier to work on because we're now going to be in an IP environment. And it's big data. So, you know, there's layer after layer of added benefit in there, meaning that if I have a entertainment complex on my facility, I have a hotel on my facility, I have a casino on my facility, I have recreation, I can now take all of that big data and I can now blend all these things together so that in food and beverage, if my cost of sales go up too high on a bar, I can actually say, you know what, that's an indication of employee theft. And now I can now watch that bar. So I can use financial data and transactional data tied to video to say, is it a customer that's causing me the loss or is it an employee? And throughout the world, we know the percentages of employee theft are pretty high. I mean, a specific example, it was a published article we wrote in 2010, it was published. The Chief of Enforcement, Jerry Markling, with the Gaming Control Board in Nevada, wrote an article with me. And in that article, he talked about something that was trending up. And of all the criminal cases around gaming-related crimes, 67% of all the money recovered and related to those crimes, an employee was involved in the crime, which is pretty high when we talk about employee theft. So as a security and surveillance executive or a business owner, if I know that, you know, in the retail sector, 47% of unknown losses are employees, and I've got a casino where my losses are as high as 67%, which we're talking the state of Nevada, I would, just watching employees alone, I can be more than 50% correct in protecting the profits and for the stakeholders, because the stakeholders are the people that have invested in seeing us be successful, and the people, the public trust we put out there. You know, because if we have people that are employees who are stealing, are we really providing a fair game in a casino? So public trust is an important thing, and I think when you talk about all the contributions that high definition video makes, it ensures the public trust because of the level of clarity that we bring and the fact that we can make informed decisions and have the best evidence. So, you know, when we look at how we've now kind of gone through all of these, the challenges, the transitions, the layering of security and bringing this all together, I mean, what is the real benefit? I mean, the evolution of security services and security and surveillance working together and investigations is to say, what can I now contribute to the bottom line? Instead of being perceived as a cost center as we have been in the past, where security is nothing but dollars out, whether it's labor, equipment, and so on, it's how do you make that informed decision? So I think as a security and surveillance executive today, you owe it to your stakeholders, you owe it to the companies you're working with to now take things into consideration. And so those considerations are on many levels. The first aspect would be, say, you know, when you look at reliance upon manufacturers, to have us come in and actually show you. You need to do the research, not just rely on what you're being told, but to actually look at that technology in your business setting. Is it going to contribute to giving you the right clarity? Is it going to give you the information you're trying to make? Is it going to let you now take your big data, you know, whether it's POS, point of sale information, it's going to be transactional data. If in a business setting, it's going to be what you're achieving in different departments. How do I now become a resource to the food and beverage department? How do I become a resource to the hotel to let them know that things are happening efficiently? It's a combination of access control devices, it's a combination of video resources, it's a combination of my report writing systems, because now I'm going to capture all this and I can generate reports for the C-suite to say, Douglas, we've had a problem, how are you now going to address this problem, but we're on a limited budget? Well, a lot of times that's what they throw at us. They say we have a certain budget for this. They don't realize that if I go in and I put in a modern surveillance system, a modern access control system, and I reduce power costs by 25 or 30%, what does that equate to? Is that $10,000 a month? That $10,000 a month might be $100 grand a year, And at the end of 5 years, we're talking about $500,000. If the whole project was only going to cost $400,000 to do it right, to get the right technology for your, the problem you're trying to address for your management team, and I can show that at the end of a 5-year time period, a reasonable amount of time, that if I make this informed decision based on doing the proper research, going to conferences, listening to educational seminars, just like we're talking here today, and to go out there and do, mind sharing, to where now I say, who is the right manufacturer for high definition video? Who is the right manufacturer for my access control, for my data systems, my report writing systems? Who are those companies? And then to test those products in your environment, then bring that to the bottom line. When you talk to your CFO or you talk to your managing director, you now have a real case for why they should make a little bit more of an investment, where they may have been giving you a budget of half of what you thought you needed. They may turn around and agree with you that yes, you're bringing more to our stakeholders, and in years 5 and beyond, it's more profit because cost of ownership is 0.